down, comes back up, and your goal is to get all the way up here. This would be hopefully the section or state meet, and then you want to hold your peak as long as you can before you start getting into that term of reversibility. So that's basic physiology, exercise, science, whatever you want to call it, behind strength and conditioning. That's the theories that I use. That's how I design my training. So now, the reason they asked me to speak today was to help you guys try and set up a training program for the high school season. I think 13 weeks is tough to design a program. It doesn't give you a lot of time, especially since you start to get competitive within 2 weeks usually for an indoor meet, and then within 4 weeks for outdoor meets. It does give you some time to build a base. I will say that this program, or the examples that I give you, would be based on someone who's coming out of another sport or is at ground zero for strength and conditioning. Hopefully you can get them in the weight room at other times, but if not, this is kind of how I designed this talk to go. Set up the goals. Season goes from March 14th to June 11th, so 13 weeks. Outdoor competition usually starts the first weekend in April. Conference meets May 10th to May 17th, somewhere in there. Peak at sections with the hope of holding it to state. I mean, you want to peak, you want to make state to be able to hold your peak to state, so section meets start May 31st. And then there's a possibility if you're an elite athlete, I know there are a lot of them, and some coaches even in this room, who have athletes that hope to go on to high school nationals or USATF juniors, so your peak could have to be held beyond that. Is that possible? It's tough, especially coming off just a 13-week cycle, but it is possible. So designing the program, the macro cycle is the season, 13 weeks to take an athlete from no lifting or a different sport to maximal strength. Mesocycle broken down the 13 weeks into 4 mesocycles, 4.5 I guess if you look at how I wrote it up. Mesocycle 1 is 2 weeks of enhanced capillary density training, which sounds weird, but I'll talk about it a little bit. And then 2 weeks of strength endurance, very similar to ECDT, but a little bit different. Mesocycle 2 is 4 weeks of strength training, then speed strength and strength speed. Mesocycle 3 is maximal strength, reactive strength, dynamic strength, triple extension movements, your power cleans, that kind of stuff. And 4 is your taper. You start week of sections and hopefully hold it through the weakest state. ECDT, studies show that properly designed strength training can increase capillary density. Whether that increase is actually creating new capillaries, increasing the depth that they innervate the muscles, or waking up capillaries that are already there that aren't being used, it doesn't matter. You get the same effect. That's a picture I took out of a study that was 20 days, and that's just, I think it's a drawing, I don't think it's actually a picture, but that's the results that they found after 20, I think it's 24 days or something of EDT training. And that's how much your capillaries can actually be increased if it's properly designed, if rest is taken, if the weight selection is proper. So basically what it is gets more blood flow to your muscles, allows recovery to happen faster, which obviously is very important. That's the strength training that helps you recover for the next cycle of strength training. So in the 45 seconds rest you get more blood, more ATP cycled, more oxygen to your blood, that kind of stuff. Goals to increase work capacity. This is accomplished through completing more repetitions rather than trying to go heavier. So week 2, you should try and use the same weights or very similar weights and just trying to get more reps done than you did the week before. You don't necessarily need to add 10 pounds or anything like that. Technique needs to be emphasized early and often. I think that's all weight training, all activity in general. I think if you're doing triple jump, you're emphasizing technique right away. You're not just letting them go try and triple jump the first day. The big thing here is complete recovery should be allowed. Complete recovery, 4 to 5 minutes. The way we write our training is we recover as long as we work in this cycle. So if you're doing 5 minutes of this, you're doing 5 minutes of recovery. It works great because then you can partner up. You go, your partner goes, you're ready for the next set as soon as your partner's done. Lower sessions should be comprised of 3 to 6 cycles of varying upper body and lower body exercises. Some examples, 5-minute cycle of step-ups performed with 20 pounds or less, added resistance, not a lot of weight, but basically what you're doing is you're doing 5 step-ups on your left leg, let's say, 5 in a row. So I'll just use this chair, just 1, 2, all the way up. Then you switch to your right leg, you go 5, okay? And then after you're done there, you just switch right back, and you just keep going for 5 minutes. Don't need a lot of weight, but it's going to get pretty intense. You're going to get some pretty sweaty kids. You might get some kids that throw up. I've seen it. It's not pretty. but I've been there myself actually.
Are you going 5 minutes for the college athlete? What about our little sophomore that comes in? You want to start at 2 minutes?
No, same thing. There's no real resistance training. It's not really resistance training. It's general strength. I mean, you
can't
can
even walk up a stairway. I mean, I'm just saying he's really weak.
Yeah, I mean you can, but that's the goal, is to try and get him to adapt. And so this is pretty high volume stuff. If they're failing, obviously stop when they fail. You don't want someone to hurt themselves. But this is stuff that is actually, I talked with Cal Dietz about this because I had similar questions, but this is great stuff. You can do this all year with a 7th grader. It's not going to put a lot of stress on their joints. It is going to be challenging, but it's good training to, if they start at 2 minutes, maybe next week you try and get them to 3. Maybe the next week you try and get them to 4, and then you move on to something different. An upper body example, you kind of want to use different muscle groups but still pair exercises together. So the first one that we do every year in the fall is dumbbell incline and lateral raises. So you just go 5 reps, you're laying on an incline bench, 5 reps of dumbbells, put those down, grab lighter weights, you're just sitting up, 5 lateral raises, going back and forth, hitting your shoulders pretty hard, hitting your triceps pretty hard. Not real intense again. My throwers who are fairly strong will use 30-pound dumbbells or 40-pound dumbbells. My girls will use 15s. So it's 20 to 30% of their max, but it's a lot of reps. You're trying to get as many reps done in the time. New research shows that the best way to do this, but this is something that I won't even do to my athletes, and they don't like me during this phase anyways, is long duration isometric exercise. So you're doing a 5-minute wall sit, you're getting down in a push-up position like this, and you're sitting like this for 5 minutes, just trying to hold yourself there. And what it does is it keeps you from producing a lot of the hormones while you're exercising, because a lot of the hormones come from the actual effort. But then once you release that, there's a huge rush of hormones, huge rush of adrenaline, that kind of stuff, and you get some really big spikes in your ATP production and that kind of stuff due to 5-minute or 4-minute or 3-minute isometrics. It's brutal though. I would do the other stuff first. I think your kids would like you a little bit better. They won't like you a lot, but they'll like you better than that. So here's an example. You can't really see it. It should be in the notes though. Again, incline dumbbell with lateral raises. Then we go right into step-ups. Then it's a close grip bench paired with a wide lat pull. Standing dumbbell curl paired with shrugs, standing dumbbell calf raise paired with shrugs. And then just I like to end the workout, especially for my guys, with a little bit of beach muscle stuff. So you do triceps and biceps basically alternating. That's a little bit longer. That's, 5 cycles. High school kid, I'd probably, especially if you're training hard on the track, probably go 3 to start. Next day, squats and push press. That's an extremely taxing one. A lot of our kids will just go to the bar the first week they do that, even if they're pretty strong. Dumbbell fly, dumbbell rear delt, so working opposite muscles. Front raises and lunge walks, that's another brutal one, but a good one. You can take just 5-pound plates, just have them start walking, 10 lunges in a row, stand up, 5 front raises, 10 lunges, 5 front raises. Pretty brutal, but you can get a lot of work done in 4 to 6 minutes. That's an example that's in your notes. The next one's the high volume training. So multi-joint exercises should be emphasized. Go ahead.
Do we need to be careful with this type of thing with what went on in Iowa? We don't know the whole story yet, but my understanding is they were doing 100 squats, and then they went out and did sprints, 100-yard sprints, and then they got into some real muscle soreness, and it was over a 3 or 4 day period. We don't know the whole story yet. There's a study on it. Work on it now.
I've heard a little bit about that too. I think I don't know if that serves a purpose really. That's really high volume that is overtraining basically. I think again you need to look at what you're doing on the track, balancing it with this. I think that this can be pretty high intensity. I would complete it either 4 to 5 hours before your training or following your track training. I wouldn't do this right before. I think that's kind of where they got in trouble, was they were going back to back with things, which when we get into what we talk about here, 45 minutes for a session of strength training is as much as you can really do. You lose about 80% of your testosterone after 45 minutes has been depleted. So if you go out and try and run after that, you're running on fumes basically. I would definitely be careful. That's why I think supervision is so important. Again, is that was supervised, but obviously not well supervised, or some sort of punishment workout, which I think punishing a kid by working out is a terrible idea because that makes them think that working out is not a good idea. So, but yeah, I would never make a kid do that by any means, and I've put some kids through some fairly hard workouts. Go ahead.
Is there any phases during the season that you would actually do your strength training before the workout?
You know, we do all of ours in the morning. We try and get it done by 10 a.m. and we start practice at 3. So is that perfect? Probably not. I think probably the best route would be to do your double and triple extension movements in the morning, your squats, your power cleans, that kind of stuff, if you have that knowledge, which is not extremely taxing. Then do your training and then do your auxiliary lifting after that. Is that feasible within a high school season? If you guys are willing to be in the weight room at 6 a.m., I guess it's possible. I know some coaches that are willing to do that. But in a perfect world, that would be great. You know, in the real world, you do what you can, you use what's available. Some schools probably don't even have the ability to open their weight room early. So that's the hard part, is applying all of this physiology and all of this training theory directly to the high school season. It's great in a perfect world to use all these examples, but that's where you as a coach coming to this kind of stuff, learning this and then adapting it yourself is really important. And I think you can see some pretty good gains if you transition this right. So the next one is the high volume training, so 10 to 15 reps per set, 45 seconds to